How did a kid from the Philippines become a world champion? Manny Pacquiao was born into abject poverty. As a kid, he sold anything to make some money and buy food. At 14, he learned his father killed and ate his dog and ran away from home. He was training in a shanty gym in Manila. The owner saw some potential and allowed him to sleep there too. At 16, Manny lied about his age to make his pro debut. At less than 100 pounds, he won and earned 20 bucks. In just 2 years, he fought his way all the way to world champion and became a national hero. Manny made the move to America, but no trainers would work with him except for Freddie Roach. Manny defended his title and catapulted to God status in the Philippines. He would go on to win many more fights, but his career would be defined by giving back. Manny's made roughly $500 million and donated more than $300 million of those dollars back. Oftentimes, he doesn't even know the people he helps. He'll pay a stranger's medical bill. For example, in 2011, a typhoon devastated the Philippines. Manny came out of pocket for over $500,000 and built more than 1,000 homes for victims. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did a stolen bike turn Muhammad Ali into a champion? Now, unlike many boxers, Cassius grew up in a respectable part of town. Like most kids, he loved to ride bikes. But on one fateful day, a 12-year-old Cassius would experience an event that would change his life and countless others for eternity. He rode his red Schwinn with a couple friends to the home show. Soon after, he realized a thief had robbed him of his bike. He was in tears and vowed to an officer that he would whoop whoever did this. It just so happened that officer trained fighters. He told Cassius he had to learn first. He agreed and showed up to the gym. Cassius only trained for 6 weeks before his first amateur fight. He won and never looked back. He went on to win about every other amateur prize possible, including the light heavyweight gold medal, before turning pro. In 1967, Muhammad took the biggest stand the world had ever seen from an athlete. He refused to fight in Vietnam and paid for it with his titles and his license to box. He sacrificed 4 years of his prime before regaining his title in 1974. Muhammad is the gold standard for athlete empowerment, and to think, could have never happened without that bike. How did this little kid become Kyrie Irving? Kyrie's father, Reddick, was a star at Boston University and took his talents down under. At 2 years old, Kyrie was back in the States living in New Jersey. Life came at him quickly though. At 4 years old, he lost his mother to a sudden illness. Young Kyrie was confused and grew even closer to his father. He absorbed his passion for the game and in 4th grade vowed to make the NBA. Now, this isn't that strange. I think we all did this in grade school, but for Kyrie, it was different. He was dominating local teams. By his junior year of high school, he transferred schools to play against tougher competition. Nothing changed. Kyrie was still popping off and became the number 2 ranked prospect in the nation. He committed to Duke and shined, but a toe injury hampered his season. Despite playing in only 11 games, Kyrie declared for the draft and went first overall to the Cavs. It was the post-LeBron era, and the Cavs needed something to go right. They knew immediately they made the right pick, and we all remember what happened in 2016. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How exactly did Allen Iverson change basketball? Well, before he chose hoops, Allen was a dominant QB who paved the way for guys like Mike Vick. But at 17 years old, Allen was involved in a bowling alley brawl. His trial was entirely unfair and left him with a 15-year prison sentence. After serving 4 months, he was pardoned by the governor and never looked back. In '96, the league was still MJ's, but when Allen crossed him up, it signaled a changing the guard. He ushered in an era of individuality. Suddenly, everybody was rocking throwbacks and braids. The league was so scared they installed a dress code. Point guards before Allen were floor generals. You know, set the offense up and facilitate. Players like Russ and D. Rose can thank him for inventing the modern day guard who takes volume shots, attacks the rim, and even palms the ball. Of course, we all love the practice rant, but listen to another clip from that same interview. What really makes Allen a legend is how unapologetically human he is.
You just like me. You ain't no different. You just like me. You bleed just like I bleed. You cry just like I cry. You hurt just like I hurt. I ain't no different.
Throw me a share if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did Anthony Bennett become the biggest bust in NBA history? Now, before I break this down, I want to clarify what it means to be a bust. Now, there's guys like Fultz and Oden who go number 1 and get hurt. These guys really could have been great, but they caught a bad break. This was not the case for Anthony Bennett. The Cavs were an absolute train wreck and had the top pick for the 2nd time in 3 years. This draft was pretty weak though, as Nerlens Noel was actually expected to go number 1. Listen, I checked on Google before filming this. Not one mock draft from back then had Anthony Bennett even going in the top 3. To this day, no one is really sure why the Cavs liked him. Their GM actually voted against taking him, but was overruled. The pick became a disaster almost immediately. Anthony showed up to camp 15 pounds overweight, refused to work on his craft, and didn't even get a bucket until his 5th game. Forget getting buckets though, this man couldn't get off the bench. He was the 14th man as the number 1 overall pick. Anthony ended up playing for 4 teams in 4 years, and unfortunately, he'll go down as arguably the biggest bust in the history of professional sports. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did a broken wrist turn JJ Reddick into one of the greatest shooters to ever live? He grew up playing more than basketball. He even rode horses. He loved baseball in particular, but at 12 years old, he quit everything to laser focus on basketball. JJ was making progress until the wrist injuries kicked in. Now, he didn't just break his wrist, he fractured it 3 times in 6 months. But little did he know, this would be a major blessing in disguise. One of the most common errors young kids make when shooting is flicking the guide thumb. They're not quite strong enough to shoot properly yet, and this adds a little boost. It's a horrible habit, but for JJ, it was impossible.
My wrist was broken, I just shot one-handed.
JJ returned from the fractures with incredible form and became addicted to getting buckets.
The shooting part of basketball for me is the drug.
After dominating in high school, he signed on to play for Coach K at Duke. Despite becoming an All-American, he felt burnt out and seriously considered quitting basketball before his junior year. Now, he might have done it if one of his coaches hadn't said this.
The sad thing is, we'll never know how good you can be.
Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did this little kid become an NBA champion? Kyle Kuzma was born in Flint, Michigan, a city that's become infamous for contaminated water. His family had very little, and they were surrounded by gang violence. Kyle knew from a young age that basketball was his ticket out. He balled out as a teenager, but no one from his town ever got recruited. He had 0 D1 offers and was forced to transfer schools. After a year at prep school, Utah believed in him. They weren't completely sold though. He played only 5 minutes per game as a freshman. Nearly everybody told Kyle if he left school early, he would go undrafted, but he didn't listen. Kyle destroyed the draft workouts and proved everybody wrong by going in the first round to the Lakers. He broke out after dropping 30 to win the Summer League Finals. Kyle was improving so quickly, the Lakers took him off the table when negotiating for AD. Of course, he became a champ in 2020, but it was sad to see the Laker fans create a petition for him not to get a ring. Kyle, you absolutely deserve a ring. You made some huge shots and clutch moments, and I'm sorry Laker Nation treats you this way. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did being hypnotized turn Mike Tyson into a killer? He grew up a troubled kid in Brooklyn. Mike was experimenting with hard drugs as soon as 11 years old. By 13, he had been arrested 38 times. It was at a juvenile detention center that he indirectly met his trainer, Kuzma. Sadly, Mike's mother passed away just a few years later, and Kuz became his legal guardian. The duo quickly rose to the top as Mike won 2 junior gold medals. But the training that got him there was only half physical. Kuz believed a great fighter was built of skill and character. His strategy was to peel back Mike's layers of insecurity and build his ego. He would shower Mike with compliments about how great he was, and eventually, Mike started believing and repeating it.
I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been.
Now, once Mike had confidence in himself, Kuz brought in the hypnotist. Through these sessions, Mike developed subconscious triggers to unlock a killer. For example, he described his walk-up music as funeral music. And when he heard this, his body knew it was time to explode. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did a 6th grader who had never played basketball become Bam Adebayo? As a kid, he was shy and awkwardly bigger than everybody else. Bam was an only child and was left alone every day for hours until his mom came home from work.
You don't really get to pick and choose what you get.
After a coach noticed how gigantic he was in 6th grade, he began playing hoops. Now at this point, Bam could hardly catch, but he set up cones on the street and worked on drills by himself until he got them down. By 8th grade, he was 6'6" and posterizing everybody in sight. Bam averaged 30 in high school and accepted an offer to play for Coach Cal. After an Elite 8 appearance, Bam went 14th overall to the Heat. It was a steal for Miami. In hindsight, Bam should have gone top 3. South Beach was perfect though. They demand everybody put that work in, and all Bam wanted to do was get better. Bam popped off in 2020, making his first All-Star and nearly winning Most Improved. But most importantly, he's winning games. Nobody expected the Heat to make the finals. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. If you did, I'll settle for a like. Is Julian Newman the most overhyped prospect of all time? This kid really was a prodigy. At 10 years old, he dropped 91 points in a middle school game and got the call up. Little man was playing varsity as a 4'5", 5th grader. He went on Good Morning America and The Ellen Show. That was pretty close to the peak. Since then, he's become, without question, the most overhyped prospect in the history of basketball. Not only did he develop a serious attitude problem, but he didn't grow. Today he stands 5'7". There's been 9 players shorter than 5'8" in NBA history. A cocky kid who likes to play hero ball and badmouth his own coach during games is not going to be number 10. In fact, he's not even going to play college. How does a kid with his own reality show not have a D1 offer? It's time to officially end the Julian Newman conversation. Really? I'm just excited to stop seeing his father. You know, at least LeVar Ball's entertaining. I don't know what's good with this guy. I want Julian's story to be a lesson to all the young kids out there. Don't worry about how skilled you are today. It's all about continuing to develop. I'm Frank Michael Smith, and that's my take. How did Marcus Smart go from dead or in jail to the NBA? Life was extremely tough for him as a kid. Cancer took one of his older brothers, and he watched the other develop a drug addiction. At the ripe age of 12 years old, Marcus had no outlet for his anger and became a bully. He would go as far as to throw rocks at strangers. One day, he and his friends loaded their pockets and found a target. They knocked a man to the ground, but before they could celebrate, he was chasing them down. The man was screaming and vowing to kill them. Little did Marcus know, the man they hit was a blood and carrying a loaded gun. The only thing he could think about was whether or not this was the moment he would die. The blood was gaining on him and let off 4 shots. Fortunately, he was unharmed, and he allowed that day to be a turning point in his life. Since then, Marcus went through anger counseling. He was quoted saying, "If I didn't change what I was doing, I would be dead or in jail." Sadly, life wouldn't get much easier though, as he lost his mother and #1 supporter to cancer in 2018. His family has to be smiling down though, as he fulfilled his NBA dream and became a player you hate to play against. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. Why was Tyler Herro receiving death threats in high school? He grew up in Wisconsin and quickly made a name for himself on the court. His dad made him tough. He worked him out and would never even say good game or anything like that. Everything was working out great. He averaged 30 per game in high school and even committed to Wisconsin. That was until Coach Calipari called and offered him something a little sweeter in Lexington. Naturally, everyone was shocked when Tyler decommitted and announced his decision to attend Kentucky. Now, this really isn't that strange. It's pretty normal for an 18-year-old kid to change his mind, but his decision sent his hometown fans into a frenzy. They consistently egged, TP'd, and spray painted his family's home red. He received multiple death threats and a handwritten note telling him to break his leg like Gordon Hayward. It got so bad, his mom wouldn't let him go out to eat with friends. Instead of complaining, Tyler embraced the villain role and continued dominating. He actually started to like it and said it helped him prepare for college crowds. Of course, if the haters lost, Tyler went 14th overall and has become one of the most productive rookies in his class. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did a chicken nugget diet make Usain Bolt the greatest sprinter of all time? He was born into one of the poorest villages in Jamaica, but they quickly discovered his gift. Usain's father saw his potential and was determined to make him a star, just not on the track. Every day he woke up early to train for soccer and cricket matches. At 12 years old, his teacher jump-started his career by offering him a free lunch if he could win a race. Of course, Usain won and soon turned his back on all other sports. It wasn't so simple though. He was born with scoliosis or a curved spine, and if that wasn't enough, one of his legs was noticeably shorter than the other. After a hamstring held him back in 2004, he made his Olympic debut in 2008. It was there he launched one of the most absurd pregame routines of all time. Now, the first thing they told him was, don't eat outside the Olympic Village in Beijing. But Usain noticed a lot of foods that he wasn't accustomed to eating. So instead of risking the new flavors, he hammered 100 chicken nuggets a day en route to 3 gold medals and 3 world records.
What did you eat?
Mostly chicken nuggets. Stick to what works.
Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like. How did this little kid become Devin Booker? He's the son of a former pro, Melvin Booker. Now, Devin wanted to be like his pops, but he could only see him during the summertime because he was playing overseas. That time was well spent though. Look at how smooth his jumper is from day one. Melvin could tell his son was special and persuaded him to move all the way down to his hometown of Mississippi to have the best chance at going pro. Somehow Devin's mother agreed, but the transition was not smooth. Devin seriously considered turning around as soon as he got there. It ended up being one of the best decisions he ever made though. He averaged 31 despite being doubled every single game, had an offer to go wherever he wanted, and built a close bond with his father. He could have been the best player on any team he wanted, but committed to Kentucky and accepted a 6-man role on a team with 9 All-Americans. The Suns didn't care how many games he started, they snagged him at 13th overall. Book popped off in 2016, averaging 22 as a 20-year-old and casually dropping a 70-point game. Recently, he and his teammates transformed the Suns from laughingstock to 8-0 in the bubble. It's still hard to believe he's only 23 years old. Throw me a follow if you didn't know this. And if you did, I'll settle for a like.